Vote.
Good afternoon and welcome to a special workshop meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. Today is Thursday, November 15th. It is 1 p.m. and I'd like to call that meeting to order at this time. I'd like to go around the table here and introduce those at the table. I am Mayor Bob Severns. Jim?
Jim Wiesner, City Councilor.
Bill Larson, City Council.
Patricia Sill, Finance Director. Kathy Rosen, Public Works Director.
Beth Munns, Mayor Pro Tem.
Erica Wassinger, City Council.
And Blaine Oborn has just joined us, our city administrator. So again, welcome to those here in the audience and those watching or listening. Today's special workshop is our part 2 of department budget presentations. And I think that we have some handout material, it looks like, from our Public Works. And we have our Public Works Director, Kathy Rosen.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm going to go over just some brief information about each division of Public Works and then some changes that are might be considered significant in the operating budgets. We've already gone through all of the capital projects, so I'm just focusing on operating today. So Public Works has 8 different divisions. Each of those divisions has its own funding source. It operates as a separate department, if you will, but they are divisions within Public Works. Parks, which is is funded out of the general fund, and when you look in your budget document, anything that is 001.70 is a parks expense. Then streets, which are Fund 101, Water Fund 401, Wastewater Fund 402, Solid Waste Fund 403, Storm Drain Fund 404. Equipment rental has 2 different sections. Today we're just going to talk about the Repair and Maintenance Fund, which is 501. 502 is where the money is for replacements. And we're not going to talk about that today because those are more capital. And then we have the shop facility, which is our operations of the entire shop facility, and engineering is included in that fund, 510. So we'll start with parks. We have 124 acres of community parks and 72.5 acres of open space. Parks maintains all the green belt, street trees, Pioneer Way, and the downtown landscaping, grounds at the City Hall, Police Department, Senior Center, and 18 pieces of public art and memorials. And they assist, at last count, with 42 special events that occur in the parks. And we don't have a whole lot of staff to do that, but they do a good job with what they have. We have increased the utility line item by $60,000 due to purchase of water for the splash park. The Parks Division pays the same rate as any other high water user in the city, which is our highest rate because we have conservation rates. So we have, and we don't, since we don't have any history of what that's going to cost us in terms of water, we estimated $60,000. And as we move forward with our reuse program, once that's implemented, we're hoping that the cost of the irrigation water will go down. But I don't have an estimate because I don't know exactly when that's going to come into play, and we wanted to be conservative in our budgeting. Our current staffing level is pre-2010. In 2010, we were authorized to have a staff position added, and due to the recession, that position was eliminated in 2012, and we have not yet refilled that position. And Hank, how many people do you have? You've got
6 full,
including yourself.
including myself.
So we've got a working supervisor, a manager, a working lead, and 4 parks specialists to maintain all that I went over a few minutes ago. So our contract with Windjammer Park Improvements requires that the contractor provide 1 year of maintenance after everything gets installed. So 2019 to early 2020, the maintenance of Windjammer Park is covered. However, after that, we need to take that maintenance on. And we did make a request to fill that position that we had authorized in 2010. But as far as I know, it's not been included in the proposed budget moving forward. So I would just like to make a plea for some consideration. I think we'll have a portion of 2020 that we would have to maintain Windjammer without that additional staff person, and Hank and I will be meeting with Blaine to talk about, you know, how we can prioritize our work. We may have to decrease level of service in other areas in our parks or open spaces, but I would really caution as we move forward beyond 2020, we've got a lot of capital projects in our capital list. We've got a proposal to construct a new regional park, and we really need to find some way to fund the ongoing maintenance of that. It seems like finding the money to build things it's not always easy, but it's certainly easier than finding the money to do the ongoing maintenance. And so I would hate for us to build all these beautiful things and then have them fall into disrepair because we just can't afford it. So I think we can struggle through this budget without that additional person, but as we move forward with additional capital projects, I would ask that we look to find some way to either fund the ongoing maintenance or maybe even postpone the construction until we can fund the maintenance so that we're not making ourselves look bad with the public.
Mayor's
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's right. Would just be one staff position, or would we really need two with the regional park and then the extra care that the stuff we're putting in a Windjammer, it just seems like it may need more care than it had before. So
I'm thinking for this budget cycle and the next, we could probably get by with one. But once we start the actual development and use of that regional park, even if it's a small portion, then we're going to need to look at additional staffing. And as we move in,
21
and
beyond.
and as we move into the next phases of Windjammer as well.
I think the key area had some initial discussions. We've got to look at revenue options. I mean, it's just not coming out of our regular, and we can add it there, but then we're cutting other departments down. And so we've got to, I call it increasing the size of the pie, because if we're increasing the expenses for operating, it's not fair to cut it somewhere else and not really applicable. But when we built these extra parks and such and doing our expansion, we're increasing the size of a pie of our expenses, and so without increasing the size of our revenue, and we've got to look at both increasing, and so we've got to make a good case on the need for additional revenue for additional services. So, and there's avenues that are available, and certainly we'll be exploring those things as we go towards 2021, where it'll become critical for us to increase the staff with all the new parks that we have.
Councilor Servadius.
I would just like to say thank you. I know I comment to the public a lot of times. I'm amazed. I look at how long it takes me to mow my lawn. And to think that we take care of a city with 4 or 5 essential full-time people. I know we bring some seasonal folks on, but we do need to take this seriously and plan ahead, because it doesn't make sense to build something that then isn't maintained. But you guys do a good job. Thank you.
Okay. So any other questions on parks before I move on? All right. Streets, Fund 101. So maintenance activities are all the local residential streets, our collectors, our arterials, and all of the streets except SR20. And we're not anticipating any significant changes in our operating expenses. And Rich, you have 4 full-time people in the streets. 4, and that includes the lead, a working lead. But we are very excited about the TBD, which is going to help us here. So thank you for that. So, water is our Fund 401, And one of the big things that we're requesting in this budget is to fill one previously authorized, and it was filled, but it's currently vacant position. And I wanted to talk a little bit about our philosophy in Public Works, and we are always trying to operate as leanly as we possibly can in terms of staffing. And in 2009, we had 8 Water Division employees. And we implemented automated meter reading and some other efficiencies, and as people left or retired, there were some that we didn't replace. And so 2009 we started at 8, 2010 we went down to 7, 2011 through 13 we had 6, and then in 2014 we had a retirement. And from that time to right now, we have been operating with 5 Water Division employees. As our system has continued to grow, regulations have continued to increase. We implemented that automated meter reading system about 10 years ago. You recently approved additional money to replace some of the batteries because the batteries are starting to go out. And so that workload in changing out the batteries on the automated meters is increasing that workload. So we are asking to fill one of the vacancies that have been created since 2009. And then it's that time again, 2020, we need to update our water system plan. We have a consultant do that for us. We're budgeting $200,000 for that. And also, we're going to rebuild our pressure reducing valves out of the repair and maintenance line item for $17,000. And I've included the specific line items here, so when you do get your line item budget, you can see where those are. And that's it for water. Any questions on that?
Just more comment. Would you go back one slide, please? Yeah, I think this is very interesting. Obviously, with changes in technology, in some cases we're able to do the same amount of work, maybe with less bodies. But when we look at when we talked about the property tax initiative the other night, and you see 2 lines, that tells some of the story as far as we can only increase revenue at 1%. And Mr. O'Born, you just touched on it too, that we have to look at ways to increase the pie. That's a pretty telling slide I think it'll be important as we move forward next year with whatever public affairs person we utilize or however that capacity is filled. Some of these stories need to be told because the public, I think, needs to understand. I know you're being efficient and lean, and it comes down to a point of what amount of service are you willing to pay for. At some point, we have to increase the size of that pie or we cannot provide the same services. That's a very interesting slide right there. So, thank you.
And Debbie Mueller, our admin assistant, has kept a running spreadsheet by name since 1997 of the employees that filled each of the positions and when they left, who replaced them. So it's all documented. So we've got the backup to show this. All right, next is wastewater. This is your Fund 402. And wastewater is more than just wastewater treatment. We also provide the operation and maintenance for the collection system, which includes more than 70 miles of pipe and 11 different lift stations. And then we've got the new clean water facility, which is producing some really nice water, we were told this morning. Our BOD was 1 when our limit is 30. So that's exciting.
Water yesterday, so it's very clear.
Yes, it's very exciting. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a cheat sheet here. We've tried in wastewater and in another fund we'll get to keep track of our expenses by programs. So in wastewater, we've got the collection system, and we want to know how much it costs us to maintain that collection system, which is 40210. So any number in your line item budget that starts with 40210, know that that is a collection system cost. 40220 is the seaplane-based lagoon, which we will be finished with at the end of this year. So you will see zeros, or you won't see that. But historically, there will be numbers in 40220. 40230 is the RBC plant. Again, that's no longer in use. 40250 was the former Whidbey Island Bank, which is no longer in use. And then 40260 is our new clean water facility expense. So that's just to help you identify the different programs within the wastewater budget and why there may be zeros moving forward. So the operating expenses for the new clean water facility are just estimated based on similar types of plants and what their expenses have been. Because we have not operated it over a period of time, we don't know exactly how that's going to look for us, but we've done an estimate with the help of our engineers, Carollo, to identify what those costs might be. And then the other thing we've got is an interpretive center, and the cost for that would be shared between wastewater, water, storm drain, solid waste, and general funds. We talked about the capital part of that, which would be to design and develop and actually construct all of the displays that will go in the interpretive center in 2019. So that's a capital project that we've talked about. And then what we're asking for in the budget is to staff that and open the doors to the public in 2020. And our intent is to try to find volunteers, docents, interns, if we can. However, again, we don't know how that's going to look and how many hours, if it's going to meet our needs. So conservatively, we're asking to budget for that position, but understand we will be actively searching for ways to reduce that cost through volunteers and docents. And some of you may remember we did have an environmental educator until 2012 that was funded out of the utilities. So this isn't a new concept for us. And that is it for wastewater. Any questions on that one? Solid Waste, Fund 403. This is another fund where we have tried to keep track of our expenses by program, and so we've got another cheat sheet here. 40310 is our yard waste program. So we can identify what those costs are to have that program. 40320 is the recycling. 40330 residential solid waste program, so that's our roll carts. And 40340 is commercial solid waste, which is our dumpsters. We talked about this at a few workshops ago. The cost for recycling program have more than doubled. Excuse me. So we have increased that budget line item 40320-000-4700, which is utility costs for the recycling program due to the changes in the recycling market. We've increased that by $60,000. And then we have asked for $20,000 to replace dumpsters for the commercial solid waste program. That's found in our operating supplies line, 40340, 537, 3150. Our dumpsters are old, they're wearing out, the bottoms are, they can't be repaired anymore, so we need to go on a program to eventually replace them all. And those are the only changes in operating in solid waste. Any questions?
20,000 buys how many, or is that just one dumpster?
That buys several.
That
And
buys
we
several?
are moving, plastics have come a long ways, and so we are moving towards the plastic type dumpster, the quieter. They seem to be fairly robust. And so we are moving, which is actually this cheaper. So a typical dumpster would cost you about $600.
So I would imagine we would buy 2 or 3, kind of try them out, see if they're,
We've already done that.
oh, you've already done that? Oh, okay, so they're
that's why we're
working,
moving
oh,
towards,
okay.
we're moving towards
Got
plastic
it.
dumpsters. They seem to be working very well.
Okay. Thank you, I'm sorry.
Any other questions? Storm Drain Fund 404. Steve Powers talked about this earlier this week. One change in staffing would be to move our part-time code enforcement employee from the Stormwater Fund to Development Services to help with all different types of code enforcement. Ray has been focused for the last several years just on stormwater, but prior to that, he did all code enforcement throughout the city. So I think that's a really good move, and I think it's going to be beneficial to the city to do that. Our new NPDES permit begins in August of 2019. We're going to have increase in inspections, increase in stormwater awareness, public education, outreach, those kinds of things. We don't anticipate needing to add any staffing in this 19 and 20 budget. However, beyond that, we will probably need to look at adding staffing as well as some consultant assistance. So that's it for stormwater.
Would Ray Helsley still do some storm?
Kendall's doing most of it now.
she is.
But if need be, we might,
He could.
yeah, he
Okay.
could. We might need to call on him occasionally.
Okay.
Equipment rental. Again, this is just the operating portion of equipment rental, so this is all the repairs and maintenance. Just wanted to give you an idea. We have 2.5 FTEs. Sometimes we don't fill that seasonal position. And that is all of our vehicles and equipment, rolling stock generators, trailers, boats, miscellaneous equipment, and we are not anticipating any significant changes in those operating expenses at all. Shop facility fund, that's 510. And this includes the cost for the public works facility, so our janitorial, our copiers, our supplies, all of that kind of thing. The administrative staff, our overhead, and administrative staff includes the admin assistants, Rich, myself, anybody else? Tom, oh, and Sandra, I'm sorry, Sandra. Sandra and Tom are all included in that. The motor pool vehicles fall under the shop facility fund, and any capital outlay that occurs out there at the public works facility. It also includes engineering, and we've broken that out so we can track those costs separately, as well as a program, and that's under 51020. So if you see any lines that are 51020, know that they apply to the engineering function. And the costs are distributed to all of the public works divisions and city departments. Engineering, it's through the public works divisions because they assist in all of our capital projects and some maintenance issues, as well as development services. So some proposed staffing changes, and again, Mr. Powers talked about this on Tuesday. There is a proposal to transfer one engineering position. I have one vacancy now, because we just hired a city engineer who's going to start on December 10th. There is a position that was a limited term that we never filled. I'm not talking about that one, but we did have, about a year ago, an engineer left us, and that position has remained vacant. And that's the position we're talking about transferring to development services and to reclassify that position as development review engineer. And that is all I have for shop fund. Any questions on that? And that's it. How'd I do, Tim? I got the bonus, right? You said there was a bonus if I finished by 1:30.
Yes, Councilor Wiesner.
I have some comments. I was keeping track as we went through this, and I gotta tell you, I am just, my count, and correct me if I'm wrong, is through the entire Public Works Department, we've asked for replacement of one staff member that we've had gone for a while, and the addition of possibly one staff member as we're moving into 2020 to help maintain our new great investment of Windjammer Park. Kudos to you, Hank, Steve, Rich, Sandra, your entire department for what they do. The infrastructure, providing good clean water, sewage, streets. It's what makes a city a city. I do travel quite a bit, and I go into towns where I can guarantee you the infrastructure is nothing like the way it is maintained in Oak Harbor. And to think that over the next 2 years, you guys have a plan to be able to continue to maintain the infrastructure in such a way that we have, and not be doing it by just bringing on a bunch more people. I really appreciate the thought, and that's my comments. Thank you.
Yes, Mayor Brooklyn.
Off the wall kind of question on the stormwater, and I remember asking it probably 10 years ago, with all the new permitting and stuff, are we gonna have to add filters in certain places where the stormwater runs through? Not just the grate, but I mean some kind of filter that would have to be changed, or?
That is possible. So as
Okay.
part of this new permit that's coming up, they're asking us to look at watershed basins. So that's all the area that drains to one outlet point. And identify areas where we might need to do some retrofitting of the storm drainage system. So that may include some filtering, bioretention, detention. But we haven't gotten that far into that analysis yet. That's part of this new permit that's coming up. And that's where we're going to need some assistance and possibly more staff.
So the new, coming down the pike, there's no extra money for 1920 if we have to start retrofitting. That would just be an adjustment, or you think it'll be due after that?
It's going to be due after that.
Okay, so
It's
we're
gonna be due after
we're
that.
good. Okay, just
Yeah, so they extended the implementation dates beyond this budget 2-year period.
Yes.
So we're not even anticipating it or building it into the budget, but we're just giving you a heads up. We did the analysis of it, that there's a possibility there, and even getting a handle on, it's pretty ambiguous about how, and so it's hard for staff to even figure out exactly what they're doing and put a price tag or a number of staff and consultants to figure out exactly what they want us to do under that permit.
I'm sure over the next 2 years, staff will be attending trainings and educating themselves, so next budget will be better prepared to.
Yeah. And if the state wants to come in with some mandated funding, we'll certainly, that's growing the pie, but at the same time, you're growing the expenses, and that's really what you need to do. So if you're going to create more work to be done, then we need more revenue for that more work that needs to be done.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. I was at an AWC event on Tuesday, and they asked us to share a challenge and a success from each of our cities, and I was able to brag about our city, and it was a great opportunity to do so. And the thing that I pointed out was our city's ability to attract and retain quality people. We've got a lot of people with a lot of longevity, and when I see a presentation like this, it makes me appreciate even more what you guys have done in not only identifying the needs that we have going forward, but meeting those needs in the most cost-effective and reasonable ways possible. And time again, as you guys have come before us with proposals, as we look into it, it's been responsible, it's been professional, and you are all looking for ways to save the city money, because that's what it is. You know, the pie doesn't get much bigger. Our expenses have gone up, and I just want to say how much I appreciate how everyone that I've seen in this last year, my first year since being elected, I've been really impressed with you guys maintaining that bottom line and doing everything you can to meet those needs as frugally as possible. So thank you.
Thank you.
I was at that same meeting and I heard him say that.
yeah, he did.
Very well. Anyone else? So we were scheduled to go until 4 o'clock. Wow.
I know.
And you won a prize.
Most
Oh.
complicated department.
Councilor Servadius.
Circle back to Mr. O'Rourke's comments about mandated funding. Does that exist?
Money for mandated?
I don't think that. Maybe in a different state. No.
It's a good theory. It makes sense, right?
Well, seeing any other council business? Seeing no further business. We'll adjourn at 1:29 and 58
All right.
seconds.
Very good, thank you.